Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's session. As usual, we'll begin our session with a short meditation, and our theme today is understanding ourselves and learning how to process our emotions. So let's sit back and relax, and for a few moments, just assess how we are feeling. Are we relaxed? Are we disturbed? Are we anxious? Or anything away from being calm? If anyone's behavior is affecting our state of mind, then this is how we start processing our emotions. First, we sit back and just analyze what is it about someone's behavior that's poking us. What is it that we want or expect or desire that is getting violated? And how do we fill that gap of that want, of that desire, of that expectation, of whatever need that is getting violated and is affecting us? How are we processing our need by ourselves? What mental barriers can we keep and create to safeguard ourselves from going into a state of mental havoc? Because unless we don't understand ourselves and how we process our emotions, we are going to be giving the control of our lives to everything external. So, our first step, whenever anything, anyone, or even our own thoughts take us into a state of disturbance or confusion, we need to assess what is the core need that is being violated and causing us to deviate from our natural state of calm, being calm. And what is it can we do fulfill that need by ourselves. So we restore our inner state of calm and only when we go through this thought process, that's when we are able to process our emotions one by one. And the mind calms down and we start relaxing. Because now we have a better understanding of ourselves, of our reactions, of our own triggers. And knowing this beforehand means we are already safeguarded in upcoming situations. So never ever act when the mind is in a state of havoc. Always take time to sit back and retreat within. Analyze, process every thought, every emotion. Get to the bottom line of what is it exactly that we need. And focus on filling that need by ourselves without any dependency, expectation, desires from anyone outside ourselves. So let's take a deep breath in. Have a moment of silence. And then Anurag will resume the session for today. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the 12th session of Python programming. I hope everyone is doing fine. Thank you, Sister Raki, for that wonderful meditation. And we are going to start the session today. How's everybody? Good. Okay, so let's start the session with a revision, what we studied in the last class. We studied about the finally keyword in Python. I'll just take the topics, and then we studied about raising custom errors. So whatever there is in the finally will be executed. whether the execution goes in the try or if it goes in the except. If you use finally keyword and if you write anything inside finally, it will be executed. Then we studied about raising custom errors. Before that, we studied about exception handling. If there is some error in our program, how to handle those errors using try and catch. On the opposite, sometimes we want to raise some errors in our program. So for that, we use the raise keyword. And then we studied about shorthand if-else statement. Instead of, writing the normal way using the indentation, we can just write, we can use shorthand if-else. We can write the complete thing in one line itself. Perfect. So we will move on. Today we are going to study about enumerate functions in Python. Please have a notebook with you so that you can make notes also. Hmm. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Now, what is this enumerate function in Python? The enumerate function is a built-in function in Python that allows you to loop over a sequence such as list, tuple, or strings. So we have studied about list before, tuples. We know what is a list, what is a tuple. Using enumerate function, you can loop over a sequence. So this sequence can be a list, it can be a tuple, or it can be a string also. And we can get the index and the value of each element. So we can see here one example. We have a list in which we have apple, banana, and mango. And we are using the enumerate function. And I'll just show you the output. How does the output look like? Let's go to the Replit. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a list here. Okay. So I'll just name this list as marks. And I'm just going to write some values here. Okay, this is the list I have created. Now I'm going to use the for loop. So I'll write for mark in marks print mark, and also I just want to give a condition here. So if index equals to 3, then I want to print Okay. So can someone tell me what will be the output? Is this code perfect? Okay, let's see. I'm going to run it. Okay, Manjeet. So this is the output we are getting. It is showing name error. Name index is not defined. I'm just using here index equals to 3. But I have not defined the index. So it is going to give an error, the name error. All right. So what simply I am going to do initially before the for loop, I will write index equals to 0. I've defined my index. Okay. And then I want to do the increment also because we are just going to loop over this list, right? So we need to increment the index value. So I will write here index plus equals to 1. Let's run the code. So this is the output which we are getting. Okay, just a moment. Just give me one moment. Yeah. So this is the output we are going to get. When index equals to 3, we just want to print very good. So you can see after 98, it is printing very good. Okay. So this is one way of writing the code. We are just, looping over this list. But we studied about enumerate functions. We can also use enumerate functions here. So let's see how we can do that. So instead of just defining this index equals to 0, I will just remove this one. And in the for loop, I'm going to write index and then comma mark in enumerate. I'm going to use the keyword enumerate. This is a function. Okay, so that's the enumerate function which we have used. Print mark, everything will be same. Index double equals to 3 and print very good. Let's see the output. So in this case also, it is going to give the same output. After 98, when index becomes 3, it will print very good. Okay, so you don't have to define a variable and then you don't have to do the increment also. What I'll do, I'll just remove this increment also. We don't need this. Let's see the output now. So same output. Now also we are going to get the same output. That's the purpose of enumerate function. We can just using the enumerate function, we can loop over a list or a tuple or a string. Okay, so this is what I just wanted to convey. Now, what we can do, one more thing we can do here is that we can define the start index also. Now, say for example, after the marks, I'm just going to write start equals to 1. Okay, now let's see the output now. See, after 98, it is printing very good. But if I give start equals to 1, let's see what will be the output. Then after 32, it is printing very good. Because I have defined the starting variable now. It is going to start from 1. So this will be 1. My starting variable, sorry, my starting index is 1. Start equals to 1. So 1, 2, and 3. So when index double equals to 3, print very good. So this time after 32, very good is printed. Okay, if I remove this start, then the previous output after 98 will be printed because it is following that usual indexing 0, 1, 2, and 3. So after 98, very good will be printed. But if I define the start index by writing comma start equals to 1, then the output will be changed. Make sense? Able to follow? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Very good. One more example I would just like to share here. Huh. Okay. This thing. Now, if I run this code, see, you can see fruits, apple, banana, and mango. I've used for index fruit in enumerate fruits. That's the list which we have created. And we have used the enumerate function here. And then I'm going to print the index and the fruit. So what it will do, it will give me the index and then the particular element at that index. So this is the output 0, 1, and 2, apple, banana, and mango. So it is going to give me the index also and the element at that particular index. Now if I write start equals to 1, then I'm just giving the start index as 1. So see the output here, the index has changed. For apple, it is showing 1, and then 2 for banana, and 3 for mango. Okay. So that's how we can use the start for specifying the index. All right, so this was about the enumerate function in Python. Perfect. Let's move on to the next concept, which is about the name variable. There is a variable called double underscore name double underscore. So what exactly it is? Let's see. Now, here we can see I have two files with me, demo and calc. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I will just write this variable print double underscore name double underscore, and let's see the output. So here I'm just going to write, I've just opened the shell there. Yeah, good evening, Sachin. So you can see here the output is double underscore main double underscore. So whenever you print the name, its value will be main. So instead of just using that double underscore, I'll just call it as name and main. Okay, so that it doesn't sound confusing. Please pay attention. This is a very important thing, It might be a little bit confusing because there is a word called underscore, double underscore. So I'll just take this one very slowly and pay attention. So main is actually a static point of execution. You have to just understand that when you print the value is, see, name is a variable. A variable has some value, right? So if I just print name here, this is the output. Double underscore main double underscore. Okay. Now if I do the same thing in calc, uh, just a moment. Sorry. I think there's some issue. Just give me a moment. Just a moment. I've just created a new file there. Okay. Let me write print. Okay. If I run this, I'm going to get the value as main. All right. Now what I'm going to do, I will be creating a new file here. So I'll just go there and I'll write hello. I've created a new file. Now in my new file also, I'll just print the same thing. Okay. So there also it gives me main. All right. So in both the file, I'm going to get the output as main. But let's see. What if I just write here, hello. Let's see what will be the output. In the shell, I'll go. So it gives me the output as hello. I have created a new file, hello.py, and I've just written printed hello, print hello. So it gives me the output as hello. Okay. Now I will just add one more thing here. I'll write plus and I'll write double underscore name. Let's see what will be the output. This time it gives me hello main, because I'm just using this main name variable as my first file. Whenever you use the first file, then the value of name will be main. I'm just running this code as a first file. Whenever you run the code as a first file, then the value of name will be main. Okay, so here also I'm going to get the same output. Name will be main. All right, now let's go in main.py. What I'm going to do, I will import hello here now. Let me import hello. All right, and this time I just want to print something. All right, main, that means this main.py says the name. Let's see the output. So what's happening? It is giving me hello, hello, and main says main. Now see what's happening. I have imported hello here. So whatever is there in hello will go in the main.py. So in hello, what we have written? Hello and then the name variable. But see, this time the value of name has changed. It is showing me hello. Previously, it was showing me main because I ran this as the first code. That's why it was showing main. But after importing, I imported hello. Now the value of name has changed. It is showing me hello. So after importing, it will show the name of the module. What is the module I have imported? I have imported hello here. So the name will change to the name of the module. I hope it is not sounding confusing. It is very simple. See, previously in hello, we wrote the name variable. For that, it was showing main. But after importing, it has changed. The value of name has changed. Because after importing, it will give the name of the module. What is the name of the module? Hello. So that's why it says main says hello. See, after import, this will go in the main also. So it says hello 2 times. One time hello, and the name variable has changed to the name of the module. So second one is hello here. Okay, does it make sense or is it sounding confusing?
Sir, can I ask a question, please? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Sir, in order to run the hello.py in the main file, could we also have use the same command that we run in the interpreter? Like in the interpreter, we use Python hello.py. So
Hmm.
in order to run it in the main py, could we also use that command? Because it
Yes.
seems import hello, is it equivalent to Python hello.py?
Yes. See, whenever we are importing, see, this is the module. Hello is basically a module. Now, if we have written import hello, whatever is there in the hello will come into the main.py also. Everything will be imported. So that's why we can see here we have written hello and then the name variable. This also goes in the main.py. So it is giving me two output, hello, hello, and then main says main. Okay, so you have to just write the name of the file here because we are doing this in shell. So you'll write Python and the name of the file. So if you want to get the output from hello.py, you'll write Python hello.py. If you are using main.py, then you'll write Python main.py. Okay, so this is the difference. I hope it is making sense. It's very easy and it's just a little bit confusing. It may sound little bit confusing, but actually it is very easy. Name is a variable. Its value has changed. After importing, its value has changed. That's it. After importing, it will give the name of the module. What is the name of the module here? Hello. So that's what it is printing here. Hello and hello. Okay, perfect. Now what I'm going to do, I will just remove this everything. And then I just want to say hello to the user. So I'll write print hello. And then I will write welcome user. Okay. So let's run this code. So I'll write Python main.py. So it gives me hello and welcome user. This time I'm not importing anything. Previously I imported the hello, but I have removed it. Simply I have written print hello and welcome user. So it gives me a clear output, hello and welcome user. Now, next thing what I'm going to do, I will go in hello.py. Okay, let me remove this. Now, what I'm going to do, I will import main.py. Kindly listen carefully. Here, I'm going to import main.py. So I write import main and then all right, just some random thing I have written. Okay. After this, what I'm going to do, let's run this. Okay, so see, I've just written, hi, I am having fun here. It is giving me output, hello, welcome user, hi, I am having fun. I have not written hello and welcome user here in this file. It's not there in hello.py, but since I am importing main, in main, I have written hello and welcome user. So this everything will go in hello.py also. Okay, everything comes in hello.py because I have imported main here. So that's why this output, hello and welcome user, and then obviously, hi, I am having fun here. Okay, now let's do one thing. What I'm going to do, I don't want to do this. I don't want to print this hello, welcome to the user. I want to avoid that. I don't want this to happen. So for this, what I'll do, I'll just go in main.py and I'm going to write this inside a function. Let's do it. So I'll write def. That's the keyword we use for creating a function. and then obviously you have to call it. Okay. So let's see the output now. So now also it gives me hello and welcome user. I don't want that to happen. So what I'll do, I will just write here one thing. I'm going to put an if statement there. So I'll write if underscore name equals to underscore name. So I'll just put this within double quotes. And I'll remove this. I'll just put this here. Then only execute my function. Okay, let's see the output now. I will go in hello.py. See, this time it is only giving hi, I am having fun here. This time hello and welcome user is not printed. Okay, why? Because I have given a check here. If name equals to main, then only execute this. Okay, so this is how we have to just use if name double equals to main. If this is satisfied, then only it will be executed here. See, because here obviously name is not main here because I am just using it after importing. So the value of name will change. It will be not main. So this condition is not satisfied. So obviously my function will not be executed. It won't go in hello.py. Make sense? Yes, no?
But sir, if we are uh, executing hello.py, here the value of underscore name is main, right? If we are just thinking about this file.
Yeah, it's not main, no? Because this is my first file. Hello.py is my first file here. So it won't be main. That's why this is not taken to hello.py, even if I am importing. Okay, so this is how we can just put name double equals to main, and we can just, avoid this to go in my next file. That's what, see, hello and welcome user is not printed. That's the difference here. So that is the use of the name variable. Okay. So after importing, the name is going to change. The value of name will be changed. It will show the name of the module. All right. So I hope it is clear. So that is about the name variable. Please, you can watch the recording again. So it will be very clear. So these are the two concepts which I wanted to convey today. And from here, Dr. Mukesh will continue. So, hi, Dr. Mukesh.
everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anurag, for explaining those concepts. So, as mentioned last week, I want to talk few minutes about the practical aspect with a focus and emphasis on how it's going to practically use what we learned today, what could be the potential interview questions, and so on. So, based on what we've learned today, uh, so we learned about enumerate and we learned about using underscore, underscore, name, underscore, underscore. So enumerate basically allows you to loop through a list, getting the index and the value corresponding to that index. So it makes your code, you have to write less lines of code. In practical, we always have a balance of writing reusable code versus writing less number of lines of code. When we are processing data, for example, last week I talked about Databricks. And Databricks can be, you can write code in Python, you can write it in Java, you can write it in Scala. The Scala is another programming language. Why it is relevant and why I'm mentioning that over here is because you can write very cryptic code in the sense it's very few lines of code which does the same thing. What you can do in what you can do in 10 lines of code in Python, you can probably do it in 3 lines of code in Scala. But if no one else understands what that code is, so that is very powerful, right? Why write 10 lines of code when you can do it in 3? But it's a balance. And the balance is, yes, it's always better to write less lines of code because it's efficient. But at the same time, if it makes your code cryptic where no one can easily understand it, then is it worth it? And why is that code readability more important is because, as I mentioned last time, just because you're writing the code does not imply that you will be maintaining and using that code. In a large organization, when you're writing the code, you're creating one module, you're writing one Python file, but that Python file will be imported. That module, that piece of code that you've written will be imported in some other file, like how Anurag showed today. By using import, I'm importing certain functionality in some other file. So you're writing one code in one module in one Python file, but another team is using that code. So now in that case, uh, they may not need to understand it, but if you're not bubbling your errors, if you're not doing exception handlings, they will get confused and they'll try to figure out who wrote it so they can understand what it is, or they'll have to look into the code for that module implementation to understand how it works. And for them to understand how it works, if it is cryptic, then they need to be really an expert to understand how it is. For a beginner or a new person, uh, the code readability will become challenging. So, although languages like Scala, you can write, you can do a lot with less, but not many people know Scala. Not many people may understand some of that syntax, which makes it cryptic as well. So, in that case, the code readability is diminished, but the code is efficient. It's doing the same thing in less lines of code. So, as a thumb rule, it depends on the organization, what culture they follow, how they've done it. But in general, if I'm looking at the code, I always want to make sure the code readability is more important in terms of code efficiency, in terms of the number of lines of code. Because practically, if it takes 3 lines versus 10 lines, do I care? Not really, in the sense that the code should be efficient, but it's doing the same thing what 10 line of code does. But if that 10 line of codes can easily be understood by a programmer who's new to Python, who's not an expert with 10 years of experience in Python, who just has 2 years of experience in Python, but if that beginner or intermediate Python programmer can understand that code and make changes and fix it, that is more valuable to me, to an organization, versus someone who can do the same thing in 3 lines of code and only that person understands it. Now I have to find an expert, which means more time, and time is money. So we always have to have that balance. You will, in any programming language, Python not being an exception, you'll always find these advanced features which gives you that power. But that power comes that not everyone understands that power. So you have to understand that capability, when to use, when not to use. And many time when you're reading the code, there will be some keywords that you may not understand, but you can always Google for it, understand, and see what it is. So that's a general principle to keep in mind, because they may ask you, they might ask you in interview, do you prefer writing a lot of code versus efficient? And you can always give the same answer. It's a balance. And the reason is because some organizations, they say we want less lines of code, and some organizations will be on the extreme where they'll say, no, we want code readability is more important uh, than the efficiency in terms of the lines of the code. So I take a balanced approach. You can give a similar answer, and you can say, I can do it either way depending on what is the culture of the organization. If they want code readability is more important than code, the number of lines, then I can do it either way. And you can give an example. So they might, the next question would be, can you give an example where uh, you've done, you've written code which is efficient? And you can give this example of enumerate, saying yes, instead of using an iterator in the code and getting the value, I use enumerate function. Practically, one of the other advantages of enumerate is you can start at any particular index in your array, or you can do it in a reverse way as well. So there's a reverse keyword. So you can, instead of going from the index 0, you start at the end of it. So that's another advantage as such. Uh, Next question in your mind could be, why is underscore underscore name used? Do I use it all the time? Practically, I find the testers using it uh, because it's important for them to know, is this function being called, and so on. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about testing, because then you'll be able to understand when to use underscore underscore name, and who practically uses this. So we learned something new today, but would I be practically using it? Well, it depends. So eh, testing, there are different types of testing depending on what is the purpose of test. And this is again basics of testing, nothing specific to Python, but it applies to Python and any other languages. So, common interview questions: how do you test your code? What are the different types of test that you run on your code? Very common question. So, first question, we'll start with that. What are the different types of test you perform on a code, and why do you need so many different types of test? So the first, there are multiple types of testing because we want to make sure. So the first simple test is you're writing some code, you're writing some functions in some Python file. That is your module. That module is being imported in some other file. You, as a developer, right? You wrote that module, that code in that Python file. It is your responsibility as a developer to unit test the code. So unit testing implies you are testing what you wrote as a unit of code, or that module which you wrote. You as a developer are responsible for testing it before you saying yes. Anyone else can import it and use it. So you're just testing that module by itself. You're not testing how it works at the application level. Your application might have 10 Python programs, 10 Python files. You've written only two of them. Other eight are written by two other developers. Each developer would be responsible for testing their own code that they write. In reality, you're not going to be working in a program with just 10 Python files. It will be hundreds of files. It will be thousands of files. If you look at any library that you're importing in Python, like PyTorch or anything, you'll see it has so many files, right? So in that case, it's not one person who's implementing that module, because it gets complex. So you will have multiple developers working in it. So the first test that you do is done by the developer, where they are responsible for testing their own module. That's unit testing. The second test you want to do is now your application is consisting of multiple Python programs and it is importing that module. So if each of those modules is unit tested by the developer, now I need to test this whole application to make sure wherever it is being imported, nothing breaks, right? So the next kind of testing is your system test, your integration test, where you're integrating that code with the bigger code. That usually there would be a separate organizations have separate testing teams. So the developer developed and test the unit test their code. Now there will be a dedicated testing team. The testing team will test the whole application, right? So let's say you wrote a game in Python. Your game in Python, you wrote one module in that Python, but now the testing team is going to test that whole game, including importing your module, and they'll run those tests. So they may want to, they might have their own test, which will double check that you've well tested your unit code as well, right? Just to make sure that your code is functional. Otherwise, they do this whole application testing, but it's your code which is failing. So they may have some test which include your unit test, but they are going to write it, right? Because if you miss it out, they will catch it. So in that case, they need to know that this function is being called from your program or this function is being called in the main program. And they can put those conditions like Anurag showed, if underscore underscore name is equal to underscore main and so on. They can use that for testing. So when it comes to doing the system integration test or the system test, the testing team would typically do that. And they may use these special variables, which are, why is it a special variable and not just any variable? Because in Python, you define and create variables, but here you didn't define it. You didn't call the name variable. So, and in order to make sure it doesn't collide, if you create a name variable, then it becomes confusing, right? Are you using your variable or using Python variable? It gets very confusing. So to differentiate that, if it's a variable that's created by Python, then by putting underscore underscore, it's highly unlikely that you will create a variable name with underscore underscore. Why would you start a variable name with underscore underscore? Probably not. So that's why it's a special variable name with an underscore underscore. So that way, if you create a name variable, it won't collide. It won't give you error because the Python special variable has underscore underscore in it. So that's why it's a special variable name. You don't have to create that variable or assign a value. Python is doing it for you. So testing team would do that system integration test. In reality, Python, we are using it to, we last time we mentioned, right? The most two common areas where you'll use Python is one for, as a data scientist, you're using Databricks, you're using notebooks, and you're processing that data to find trends in data, to do forecasting in data, to predict, what the customer growth will be, and so on. Another use case for Python is for data engineering. You're moving data from one place to the other. So when you're moving data from one place to the other, right? So usually what we think as beginners, we think of an application which works by itself. Yes, I have a game which works by itself. It's a standalone application. But in reality, right, when you're moving data from one system to the other, your organization consists of multiple systems where each system has its own front end, it has its own web page, it has its own portal, it has its own database, it has its own API. That grouping of functionality at the application level is a system. And an organization, you can have one system for customer relationship management. You can have one system for processing your transactions from the point of sale. You can have another system which is managing the inventory of your uh, products in the company. So you have multiple systems and you need to move data to a data warehouse so you can process the data. So it's very common to move data from one system to the other. When you're moving that data from one system to the other, you're using ETL tools. ETL stands for extract, transform, load. So ETL, you're using ETL tool as a tool to move data from one system to the other. When you're moving that data from one system to the other, you may want to format that data. Instead of using first name, last name, zip code, you may want last name, first name, and zip code. Now you've changed the structure of how your system wants to consume it. In that case, if you're providing some new functionality, you're building a new data pipeline to move from system A to B. You as a developer will unit test that data pipeline. The testing team will make sure that this data pipeline is correct by making sure that the system A is generating that data correctly, the data pipeline that is moving the data is doing it correctly, and system B is able to consume that data correctly. So your testing team will system integrate the test where it will make sure each system by itself is working fine, but when combined and integrated, it will work fine as well. So testing team will do that. So we covered unit testing done by developers, system integration testing done by the testing team. Another type of common testing which is done is called UAT, user acceptance test. This test is done by someone on the business side. So you've built an application, or you're integrating data with other systems. As a business user, I want to make sure that this is working and intending the way it was intended. Because business is telling IT, go and build an application, integrate, get this CRM data from customer data from this system, and join this with the inventory and show me and build me a dashboard which shows all the products the customer has bought in the past and what are some of the future products the customer may buy. Build a dashboard for me. Business will tell that. IT is going to understand those business requirements and write some code, and testing team is going to test that code. And now the business user will say, okay, let me test it from an end user perspective to see this is working as intended. So the business is participating and contributing to that UAT to make sure that this code is working as desired, as they what did it. So they would have some real life scenarios which they have in mind, which testing team could have probably missed as well. So business participates in that. Does. And there are other kind of testing as well, but essentially I just want to give you an exposure as to the software development life cycle, SDLC. As I mentioned before, IT is all about acronyms. The more acronyms you use, the more fancy it sounds, and it gives the impression that you've been in the industry for a long time. So get used to using acronyms. So I've used 4 or 5 acronyms today. We used one acronym for ELT, extract, transform, load. We used a lot of acronyms. We used UAT, user acceptance testing. We called system integration testing, or SIT. So IT is all about acronyms, right? So this will give you an SDLC, software development life cycle. So get yourself familiar with in the SDLC. What is the purpose of testing? What are the different types of tests you do? So as a developer, as a programmer, you're aware not only what you're doing, but how other teams are interacting with you and what they are doing as well. With that, I'll conclude here. Any questions?
Excuse me, sir. Just one
Yes.
small clarification. I've also heard the term VAPT, Vulnerability Assessment and Potential Threat. So that is a kind of UAT, or is it separate altogether?
Actually, I don't know the answer. I'll have to look it because I don't work much in the testing, but I'll look into it, and probably in the next session I get back to you. What is it called? VAPT?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. I don't
Vulnerability
know.
Assessment and uh,
Okay, okay,
Potential
okay.
Threat.
That I can answer. Okay, I didn't know the acronym. Uh, so vulnerability testing. What does that mean? So every code, you want to check for vulnerabilities. But what is vulnerable in a code? So vulnerability testing is done by the security team. And what they're checking is how vulnerable, how weak is your code and how well it can stand the test of some malicious hacker wanting to use your code to get into the program. Many times what happens is that you are you're taking a SQL query and you're letting it pass in. But there are common types of attacks called SQL injection, where instead of saying select star dot star from something, or I'm saying select that variable name, right? And then put it in that SQL statement. But that variable name, I can put star dot store. I can abuse the user of that variable name so that the system will perform some unintended activity, thereby letting me exploit a flaw in the operating system or in the programming language, some module, to gain access of the system. Right. So that's how the hackers work. So we want to test and make sure that whatever system, whatever application, whatever code that we wrote passes that vulnerability test. So there are tests, different organizations may call it differently, but essentially what it is doing, it's doing a vulnerability scan where it will see what ports are you opening. Did you write or did you open a TCP connection, not close it, or are you putting your password in clear text, and so on. So it does a lot of testing. But to answer your question, that testing is done by the security team because their job is to make sure that no code goes into production which is vulnerable, which would enable the hacker to exploit any vulnerability in your code, to thereby gain access to the system. So there are softwares which would actually take a module and actually look and check for all vulnerabilities. We use the most common one is Sync, SYNK. There is another one called Sonar Cube or Sonar Lint. They'll check your code coverage, and they will check for the vulnerability as well. And many times when you've deployed an application, uh, the vulnerability scanner will continuously look for any vulnerabilities in your code. So although you deployed your code, but you're using a lot of system libraries, you're using a lot of code which is open source. And if any vulnerability is found in that open source code, then you need to be aware of it because you're importing, let's say, Log4j for logging. And there was, and then this happened. So Log4j is a very popular logging library in Java, and there was a vulnerability in that code. And because a lot of organizations use that as a black box, it causes havoc because everyone who was using that module was now subject to that exploitation. So the security team is continuously using vulnerability scanners to check for those vulnerabilities. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It's actually vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. Now I remember.
Yes. Yeah. So the penetration testing is also done by security team, but as part of that penetration testing, what they are seeing is, can the malicious hacker penetrate to get access into the system or the application by exploiting any vulnerabilities in your code or any vulnerabilities in the modules that you've used.
Thank you very much.
Okay. With that, I think we can conclude the session with meditation.
everyone. Let's end this session with a meditation again. Let's sit back and relax. And the theme today is boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries for ourselves, so that we are not affected or not allowing anything toxic to hurt us. First and foremost, we need to cut ties with the version of ourselves that has allowed negativity within and allowed it to be carried for a long period of time. When we say cut ties with that version of ourselves, we really meaning breaking out of those thought patterns, out of those emotional patterns, completely breaking out immediately. It may not be easy, it definitely is not easy. But even if we reach to that first step of detecting that we are entering that negative thought pattern or emotional pattern, the moment we detect and become aware, that's when we can cut the cord from our own mind and gradually start changing that thought cycle. So, on one hand, there's this mad rush of thoughts of negative quality. And what we are doing is, moment we become aware and realize that we are entering that loop, our first step is to slow down that cycle. And we can do that by only constantly just saying, calm down, calm down. Be in silence, calm down. This thought helps to reduce the speed of that cycle of negativity that's going on within our mind. And then the next step is going from negative to positive. So we are slowing down the quantity of thoughts, and now we are reversing the quality of thoughts. It is like a car going in high speed in reverse. And gradually we are trying to control the speed, change gears, and go forward. It is not easy, definitely not easy, because the power of habit is much stronger than our power to reduce the quantity of our thoughts. We may fail several times, but it is okay. We cannot give up trying. Just constantly we reiterate these two thoughts: calm down, be in silence. It's okay. Calm down, be in silence. And now think forward positively. I cannot change anything happening outside of me. I can change the way I think and perceive and look at things. If someone is insulting me and I feel disrespected, my core need is to feel respect. I cannot gain that from outside. So I fill it with my own self respect, which means the positive thought that I take is that I am worthy, I am capable, and I do not need anyone's acknowledgement or confirmation for my existence or my deeds. Once I gain my self respect back by controlling it, I'm no longer impacted by insults of others. In fact, I'm a step higher than others, where I can clearly see the flaws in their thinking, in their mindset, in their actions, in their deeds, in their behaviors. And because I'm at an elevated state, beyond the influence of others, and I can clearly see flaws in others, I can also donate good wishes so that their thinking also becomes elevated. And it does work. This technique does work. So let's try it in the upcoming week. Put it into practice and see if that helps us. Thank you again for joining today's session. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week ahead. Goodbye.